There are a lot of very fine first-rate minds in here. But by my experience in this building, none of you have ever been taught the tools by which your mind can work easier on the information that you get from the outside world. We concentrate on ideas and the structure of how people think. So memorizing things and writing it down on a test never happens in here at all. It doesn't happen once. You may have tests, but they won't have anything to do with paper and pencil. And you begin to understand how to use these tools, you will have taken a giant step forward to being a powerful, independent human being.
Hey everybody, this is Brett, and welcome back to School Sucks Live. Osborne, who's in the studio with me tonight.
Hey man!
How you doing?
I am thankful.
Yeah, it's Thanksgiving.
Yeah, that's right. It's that day.
Did you have a good one?
It was good and not so good all at the same time.
I would say I had the best one that I've had in many years.
I will say food-wise, this was the best one I've ever had. We made a turkey and some sweet potatoes, and that was it.
We had turkey as well, and some sweet potatoes.
Nice.
And some beef.
Ah, beef.
Yeah, that's sitting in my car. I got some leftovers. There was some pies. I sampled the pies. I'm not supposed to eat pie, but
Okay.
I had a little bit.
We did have some paleo pumpkin pies that have been around for the last couple days, but I didn't really dig into them.
And it was very placid. I didn't start any trouble.
That is unusual.
Yeah,
And doesn't make for a good show.
if there are
We
four
need
holidays.
stories.
Well, I wanted to interview people about, we were going to talk about the appeal to tradition, which is a logical fallacy. We're going to take the show in a slightly different direction. But I wanted to interview all of the olds in my family about what does it mean? What is tradition? What is the importance or the value of tradition? But I didn't. Instead, here's four holidays that I'll ruin for people every year. Christmas, that's an easy one. You know, you bring up Saturnalia, the pagan festival that existed before. 4th of July, that's a super easy one to ruin. You know, I'm talking about get-togethers because I can ruin Memorial Day, I can ruin Veterans Day,
Valentine's Day.
I could ruin Valentine's Day. But my big four to ruin: Christmas, 4th of July, Easter, and of course, Thanksgiving. But I kept my lips not sealed, but certainly off that subject. And we had a very wonderful family time.
Wow.
Small gathering,
Sure.
my mom, my brothers, their kids, my uncle. But yeah, this is an important day, and I actually kind of look fondly back at this day for many reasons.
Already you're looking fondly back.
Well, this year was a momentous one because I shot my first turkey yesterday.
Oh, you didn't even tell me this.
I did.
Oh my goodness. Do tell.
Well, boy, it scared the crap out of everyone else in the frozen food section.
You, sir, should not be allowed to handle firearms.
You hear, that's going to be our theme song when I tell a Thanksgiving-related joke
Poster
tonight.
child for the Brady Bill.
Yeah. Did you hear that?
Hear what?
This.
It's Thanksgiving. We are gonna have a good time.
That is going to be the song.
No.
That is
different.
No, different. Different
okay.
girl, similar disastrous ending right at the beginning of a career.
Right.
But that's going to be the song whenever I tell a Thanksgiving-related joke on the show tonight. That's
Oh, good.
complete.
It'd be Thanksgiving theme song.
Did you ever see Bernie Mac on Def Comedy Jam when he came out? And like every comedian at the thing was bombing, right? You remember Def Comedy Jam? It was hosted by Martin Lawrence. It was a tough
I've heard
crowd.
of it. I never,
Right.
yeah.
So Bernie Mac comes out. He's an unknown comedian. He's wearing a ridiculous outfit. He looks like a juice box or something, like it's children's candy.
Oh, that's his style.
He gets on the stage, right, with those, he had that scary look, if you can picture Bernie Mac, in this ridiculous outfit, like some kind of clown gone mad. And he said, "I ain't scared of you MFers," right, and stared the crowd down. And then he would start telling jokes, and he would punctuate his jokes. After every joke that he told, he would say, he would make the DJ play music, and he would dance. And then he would tell the DJ to cut the music, and he would say, "I ain't scared of you." And he would do it after all the other. It's like one of the greatest comedy performances ever. So in tribute to Bernie Mac, he's dead, right?
Right, he is.
Yeah. Every time I tell a Thanksgiving-related joke tonight, you're going to hear that song by Nicole Westbrook. It's called "It's Thanksgiving."
All right.
I didn't shoot a turkey yesterday. Thanksgiving is special to me for other reasons. And we talked a little bit about this before the show, and I think you actually had a similar story to tell. It was the story of Thanksgiving that I learned when I was in college that really ignited my interest in history, which for so many years, at least all through middle school and high school, had been my absolute least favorite subject. I couldn't stand history. I thought it was so boring.
I as well, yes.
But when you get to college, now there's pitfalls of learning about stuff in college too, as we've talked about on the show, and you've certainly experienced. But I remember this shock of like how much more there was to this story than just some dumb fairy tale they tell you in second grade.
Yeah. Well, see, I think history is that subject that is so easy for college professors to suck students in and warp their minds.
Why is that?
Because unlike any other subject, history throughout all of pre-college education is just here's these dates and these names, and you just learn these things. But as soon as you get to college, now there's all this spin that goes on, and the professors mold these stories of histories to fit their own particular ideology and whatnot.
So they can tell you stuff that's almost 100% true. And I believe that, the research of people like James Loewen, who wrote The Lies My Teacher Told Me, Howard Zinn, who was a big influence on me, he wrote The People's History of the United States, and my history professor, when I was most of what they said was true. Maybe almost all of what they said was this fresh, wonderful, exciting perspective about what had really happened to ordinary people in the past.
Yes.
Erased from history, from this fairy tale version that we get in government school. But they can just tweak it, as you're saying, right? Just a little bit to package or like kind of put their agenda into it and send it along to you. And it worked on me.
Mm-hmm.
I was a socialist when I graduated from college.
Yes.
Yeah. And I have a prop here on the show if you're watching us on video. If you're not, what's wrong with you? We're at schoolsucksproject.com/live. Head over there and you can see us. You can participate in our chat. Actually, neat new feature on the video page. Above the video screen is the LRN chat, if you want to get into that. Below the video screen is the UStream, the School Sucks UStream chat. You could participate in one, the other, or both of them. You can even reduce, you can zoom out and you can see it all at the same time, but you need good eyesight and probably a pair of reading glasses, even if you have decent vision, to do that. But you can just kind of scroll up and scroll down and see what's going on in both chats. But tonight, I want to be a very interactive show, even though, Osborne, I'm expecting us to have virtually no audience because it's a holiday, which is fine. We're recording a podcast here. We're recording YouTube videos here. We're two friends having a nice time at 10 on a Thursday night, like we always do. But here's a prop. I'm holding up this binder, right? And you can see that it's falling apart.
Is it a binder full of women?
Ramney. No, this is actually the binder that I assembled, and I'm going to open it. I hope this isn't too distracting for the audio people, but I'm flipping through. All of these are handwritten notes that I took. You can see it's highlighted in some spots. This is the binder that I used when I taught American history in a private school. And I picked it up the other day because I knew Thanksgiving was coming, and I said, no matter what we wind up doing the show about, it would be nice to have like a few here and there's about the old Thanksgiving. So maybe I'll go and I'll see what I used to tell kids. Maybe we'd even find something funny. Like I used to say something ridiculous, and I'm sure there's plenty of examples of that in that binder, like things I totally wouldn't stand by anymore when I was still stuck under the spell of the left-wing presentation of history and economics that so many of us get in college. But I stumbled across the story, and I can tell that my teacher, who was a young guy when I had him, was influenced by Zinn, was influenced by that Lies My Teacher Told Me book. And I looked at my notes, and then I had this I was at my brother's, and I had this thought. I wonder what his two kids, one's 13, so he's in 7th grade, and one is 6, so she is in 1st grade. What if I go and interview them? Just, not on the record, but just casually about like, hey, what do you cover in school about Thanksgiving? What they told me was interesting, and it kind of fits this thesis that I had put forward much earlier in School Sucks podcast that we are going to talk about in just a couple minutes. This is the live show, 843-JOIN-SSP, Skype in, School Sucks Live. We'll do open phones all night. We'll do open chat all night. I'll look in the chat. Osborne will look in the chat. and we'll make this real interactive because after all, Thanksgiving.
Do you want to take back control of your own money? Then take a look at Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the world's first decentralized.
Man, time flies.
Yeah.
That was tight. So how far did I get? We got nowhere.
No. Of course not.
But that was pretty much the point that I wanted to make. So, but I think we should just pick it up right there when we get back. Talk about the shock of college.
Shock of college. Yes.
Yeah.
Shock of college.
When is my second?
Boom. Shock of college.
Should I? Am I going to do the made up? Should I do the made up story? That's really first segment
we'll
shit.
See if we can slip it in there somewhere.
To do. Let me let's ask the chat. You can determine what I do on the show. Hold on a second. Okay, people in the chat, glad to see you all. Glad to see some participation. This is my first time watching live. Welcome. Thank you. 497. If you log into UStream, I can see your name, but if you like anonymity, that's fine too. So people say, welcome, welcome, welcome. This is so wonderful.
Yeah. I like 67907 says, I like this family better than mine. Sometimes I agree.
So, anyway, I want to tell a story that I'm going to completely make up about how Pilgrim, the real story of Thanksgiving is that Pilgrims and Indians wanted to start a band that was like to deal with the issues that they were having with one another. Like, remember when the East Coast rappers and the West Coast rappers got together and did We're All in the Same Gang? And then there was a turkey who wanted to join the band, which I will do a ridiculous voice for. And they wouldn't let the turkey join the band, and the turkey continued to be a nuisance. And eventually what happened was all turkeys were banished or kind of cursed to silence, and the Pilgrims and Indians ate the turkey together. But it also has this kind of element of cannibalism too, because the turkey is personified. The turkey is personified in this story. It will talk. So do people like this? Do you want to hear this? This is really like first segment kind of shit, but I'll do it in the second segment. If type 1 if you'd like to hear this ridiculous story.
Cards and hoodies. The Free Aid Silver Dime Card Project is sponsored in part by Roberts & Roberts Brokerage, Freedom's Phoenix, and Don't Tread on Meme. Visit FR338.
Oh man, there's only I only see 4 different people in the chat.
It says guess 10. What's that mean?
It means there's 10 people in the chat.
Okay.
FM. Plus, you'll still be able to listen to the Liberty Radio Network via the cam feed in high quality 24/7, even when there's no live show being produced in our Keene studio. But wait, there's more. Our chat room is built into the cam page so you can interact with other listeners online. Listen, watch, and chat.
I don't think we are. I think
People are saying 2. What does 2 mean?
2 means don't tell the story.
Really? All right.
I really want to. Come on. I was sure that was going to be a 1. Any ones? Come on. What if I
guess we can assume that the other 8 people are saying 1.
We could assume that. All right. What if this is the turkey's voice.
Okay, he
no, wait.
recants.
The person who typed 2
did it twice.
Typed it twice.
And now he's recanting.
And they say priorities. Good. All right, here's the turkey's voice. Hey, can I wait? Hey, can I be in your band? No, wait.
No.
Hey, can I be in your band? Hey, can I be in your band?
Is it like a
Hey, can I?
What if he's like Timmy from South Park? Turkey.
No, he needs to say more than that.
Oh, okay.
He's part of the narrative. He's got to talk.
Okay.
Hey, can I be in your band? That doesn't sound retarded. Like a turkey is an idiot, right?
Yeah, they are. They do seem dumb.
Via our Facebook page at facebook.lrn.fm. That's Facebook.
So I had to listen to
Hey everybody, this is Brett. Welcome back to School Sucks Live. I'm in the studio here with Osborne. It is Thanksgiving. If you're just joining us, we were talking about the truth of this holiday. It's a story that few people know, and I'd like to share it with you now.
Lay the truth on us, Brett.
I was surprised to learn this because it sounded like such a fantastical story. But by the time the first Thanksgiving came at the beginning of the 1620s, there was a considerable amount of tension and strife between the Pilgrims and the natives already. And a group of them had gotten together to do like one of these. Are you familiar with super groups? They were big in the 80s. And I'm not talking about a super group like, is Rush considered a super group?
Maybe.
Like Rush is a power trio.
Sure.
I'm thinking of like these super groups, these compilations where people would come together, like Farm Aid.
Ooh,
What was the one they did? We Are the World, where they put all these people together. But
so you're not talking about like Chickenfoot.
No. This is the first example of a bunch of people from different backgrounds coming together to try and deal with social issue in a constructive and musical way.
Right.
So the natives and the Pilgrims decide to form a band similar to what we saw, I think, at the very beginning of the 90s when the East Coast rappers and the West Coast rappers got together and did We're All in the Same Gang.
Gotcha.
Right?
Okay.
So this process gets going. At the time, the industry was a lot less muddied with like contracts and agents, so they could get right to work. And a turkey comes up to their rehearsal.
Like an animal, turkey, or bird.
Yeah, because sometimes, you would say, hey, you turkey.
Right,
But
right.
this is a turkey.
Like
And
a literal turkey, with feathers. And
Yeah.
Okay.
And do you know where that phrase came from, hey, you turkey? Why you call a person a turkey?
Because of this?
It has, well, I think this has a lot to do with it because turkeys are idiots and they're annoying, right? So that would be the kind of person that you would call a turkey.
Okay.
Kind of a dummy,
Like
right?
a politician. No?
Yeah, kind of. So the turkey comes up and he sees what's going on and he says, hey, can I be in your band?
The turkey talked.
Yeah. He says,
Okay.
hey, can I be in your band?
Okay.
Sounded maybe had a little bit of a cold
Was this
coming.
like so this is like biblical times when like animals talk to people
This
and stuff?
is 1620, my friend.
Okay, so like a leftover from
Yeah.
Okay.
This is, and if you're listening to this, listen, we are going to tell real stories. The turkey says, hey, can I be in your band?
So this is not true.
What? No, we are going to tell more real stories.
Okay,
after
more
this
real
one
stories. Okay.
about this Pilgrim period, about
Gotcha.
the settling. And if you're only listening to us, I'm using air quotes for the word settling because a lot of what we're going to hear tonight is very unsettling. But the Indians and the Pilgrims, they both say, no, you're a turkey, you're an idiot. He says, I want to make more friends that are people. The turkey says, all my friends are turkeys. So they're looking at the turkey like you're looking at me. Let's just have a look at how you're looking at me. You've kind of squinted your eyes. Where are you going with this? They say, no, you're an idiot. You're a turkey. You don't even have any hands, right?
Right.
And the turkey says,
Oh, I know what he's got.
but I've got drumsticks.
We are gonna have a good time.
That's our theme song that goes along with Thanksgiving-related jokes tonight. But that is an accidental joke. That's part of the story.
Okay.
The turkey, finally, they say, look, we'll give you an audition. But the turkey is such an annoyance that eventually they make a very high-stakes wager with the turkey. Remember, this is, if you're just joining us, this is the origin story of Thanksgiving. They say, we are going to sit you at the drums, you dumb bird, and if you can keep the rhythm to this song, you can be in our supergroup to help settle these social friction that we're having through music. Right? I don't see why you want to be involved in this. You're not a Native American. You're not a Pilgrim. You're not even a part of this. You're a friggin' bird. So if you win, if you can keep the rhythm, you're in. If you lose, we get to kill you, cook you, and eat you. And none of your kind may ever utter another word for the rest of time.
Wow.
Yeah. And then they played a song, that the turkey couldn't keep a rhythm to. And the rest is history, as they say.
How did they cook a turkey back then? They didn't have ovens or
So probably the
deep
way
fryers? No?
way that at least a few people walk away from the engagement with salmonella. I would
Gotcha.
say.
Like, do you do like over like an open fire, like on a rotisserie?
What's that?
Does that sound like a way you do it back then?
I would think that would be the only way you
Okay.
could do it. And the Native Americans knew what they were doing. They would know how to cook something like that.
You think they would? Yes.
Yeah. And it's questionable as to whether or not there was even turkey there. My story, listen, if you're new to, like, if you're just like,
It seems like
dipping your toes into the study of history, the story I just told was not true. I made it up during the break. So, but we are told some pretty ridiculous stories about this event, this first Thanksgiving. And what it hides is so unfortunate, not just in what it conceals about the truth, but also in the opportunities that are missed. In the last segment, we were talking about, the shock of college, I guess we could call it, right, Osborne? How we go to college and we have these history professors and we suddenly are privy to this whole new story that's exciting and has drama and has, things that we just didn't hear in school because it was controversial. So what's absent from the presentation of just about everything historical when we are in our 15,000 hours of government school, and whatever portion of those hours are spent in some kind of history class, is the existence of controversy. It just isn't there. So there's no need for us to do inquiry because history is just another textbook. Like math or science, everything that there is to know is already known, and all you have to do is sit here and read and take a test, and then you can know it too. And I had mentioned that I was having this informal conversation with my nephew and my niece, and I asked them about it. I said, what do you learn about Thanksgiving at school? My niece is 6. She didn't know anything. Like, didn't even really, she wasn't even given the myth. But then when I asked my nephew, who was 13, he said, well, we used to talk about it a lot when I was like in 1st and 2nd and 3rd grade, but we don't talk about it at all anymore. Now he's in 7th grade. And one of the ideas that I put forward on this show a while ago is that history works in public school in 2 ways. When we're little and we believe in Santas and tooth fairies and what else? Monsters, that kind of fantastical stuff. History is about this mythology, these fairy tales, these very far-fetched stories, but we don't really, we're not asked to evaluate them and say, is this realistic? Is this true? So all these people are presented to us as like superheroes, right? So it's this very rich, memorable fairy tale. Then when we get to middle school, where my nephew is, history just becomes about filling out worksheets and, names, like you said, names and dates and boredom. And the takeaway from public school is you have all these fantastic stories like seared into your memory from those young days when you didn't know any better. And then you're left with this idea that it's just too boring from what you experienced in maybe 6th through 12th grade to ever want to look at it again. I don't know if it's on purpose or by accident, but it certainly, serves the interests of those who would want to keep it that way.
And any actual story. Oh.
We'll be back. I was. I'll give you a.
Okay.
Sorry, everyone. Osborne didn't have his headphones on. They had the natives cook for them. Somebody in the chat says.
Yeah.
They had them. That was like the least of it. But you're right. I think. What did you want to say?
I was just going to say, in any actual content besides the dates and the names, all revolves around war and conquering people. These guys conquered these people on this date. These guys conquered these other people, and there's no actual stories of human progress.
All right, so when we get back from the break, I'll just throw it to you. I'll kind of recap what we did because I have to think about how it's going to be, how the editing is going to. No, I think it's a good segue because then we can talk about unless those wars or that conquest is inconvenient, right?
Oh, okay, then it's not a conquest. Yeah, then it's
then it's a settling.
Happy, yeah.
It's a discovery.
Yes.
All right. So when we come back, I'll recap what we did. I'll throw it to you. You can say that, and then we'll get into the missed opportunity. And somehow this is going to connect us to the appeal to tradition, but loosely, and that's okay. And that's not what the show is about. We're doing a show about Thanksgiving.
At some point, do you want me to read this article about Thanksgiving?
The person you said was influential?
Yes. That one.
Yeah. How is your live reading?
Oh, good. I'm a good reader.
All right, great. Yeah, let's What's just the abstract of this article? Trying to see how it fits.
Good question. I think it's basically about the communal ownership of property and the starvation and the whatnot, and them realizing that they had to go away from the communal ownership. It ends with the true meaning of Thanksgiving, in other words, is the triumph of capitalism over the failure of collectivism in all its forms.
But they didn't. But Thanksgiving is just like a myth, though. I mean, they had a feast, but they have feasts every harvest, and the Indians were collective. Well, we'll see where it fits.
LRN.FM or follow us at Twitter at twitter.lrn.fm. It's all free, so sign up now at updates.lrn.fm for news updates delivered to your email box. Facebook.lrn.fm.
Now, the actual institution of the holiday, wasn't that Abraham Lincoln?
To receive our tweets.
And what political...
Free Press Publications is an independent alternative.
What purpose did... It's like a commemorate...
Why do you do it?
To commemorate, I think it before that it was...
Now, why did he say he did it? Why did he do it?
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
What would be the purpose of it? Maybe during the Lincoln administration, it would be a good way to try and make people remember or focus on their common roots. Right? Before slavery was tearing the nation apart.
That's true. I was hearing Barack Obama's speech on the way over here where he said, this is the time of year that we realize that no matter what our differences are...
It's always that fucking time of year for Obama.
We are foremost all Americans. Like that's the main thing that defines you, Brett, is that you are an American.
That's what he says every speech. Yeah. This is really a time to us to remember we're all united. We're coming back.
Help us cover our satellite costs with the chip in on the right side of the page at lrn.fm.
Hot dog, everybody. Welcome back to School Sucks Live. This is Brett, and with me is Osborne. We're moving pretty fast tonight, and we have plenty of time for your participation. If you want to give us a call at 843-JOIN-SSP, you can Skype in at School Sucks Live. We'd be happy to hear your thoughts on this topic, but we're finally getting to a story that I want to tell, because I think that Thanksgiving for me, in my development, my interest in history, was this really important wake-up to all of the missed opportunities of how history is taught in school. Before we went to the break, I was just talking about how I think there's this switch when we're in elementary school. History is fun and magical, and it's an adventure, and there's heroes. And then when we have enough sense, I think, to reject some of those ideas, I'm certainly not suggesting that someone in elementary school is, not capable of making sense of things. It's just, it's an environment that's really more geared towards, like, you don't know what to do because you're a kid, and then there's these big adults who know stuff, and you kind of do what they say and think how they want. And I'm not saying that this is an intentional conspiracy. I'm just saying that it's very convenient that when we get to high school with all of these magical stories forever ingrained in our memory about the mythology of America, history switches to filling out worksheets and memorizing dates, Osborne.
Yeah.
And what was the exception? What else drives history?
Well, they talk a lot about conquering and warring and fighting and killing, right?
And presidents. It's always like around presidents too.
Presidents.
Like history is very much. I mean, I remember like my notes. Some of my history notes from college are in that, and like the periods are like set up by presidential administrations.
Yeah, that's a good point. I remember. So when I was in high school, I was on what was called Academic Bowl.
Ooh.
Where it was like a quiz show type thing where I think there were 4 people on the team, and you'd compete against people from other schools, and you had a little buzzer, and you got to hit the buzzer and answer questions.
That's awesome.
And you could never like take materials with you, but you are always allowed to walk in with a plain an empty notebook and a pen or pencil. Mm-hmm. And so the first thing you do when you sit down at that table is you write down the name of every president in order, and so that you can have that to look at. Because invariably, several of the questions during the match would involve presidents and knowing something about them.
Yeah. Yeah, that is that, but that fits, the whole authority and father kind of. That's how history is organized thing. But the conquest is interesting because, most history is governments killing each other, right? And then the historians finding rationalizations for why that was necessary or why that was good. But there's sometimes where you just can't talk about conquest.
Right, depending on who you are and which history you're reading, right?
Right. Sometimes you need to take what was a conquest and call it like a settlement or a discovery, right? So that's really what we're looking at here. And like I said, there's a bunch of missed opportunities. So if you don't know too much about this story, a lot of the deaths of Native Americans, because we always talk about people always want to ruin a Thanksgiving by saying the word genocide at the Thanksgiving dinner table, right? But a lot of this was more like an accidental chemical or biological warfare that led to the deaths of so many of these people. It's an interesting story that the first migration into the New World tens of thousands of years ago began, and they came from through Russia, through the Bering Strait, where it's very, very cold. And they think that these cold temperatures actually cleansed people of a lot of the diseases because the pass through this area into this new world was multi-generational, right? So it took so many generations that soon generations were being born where, or they weren't, they kind of went through this vacuum seal where they weren't bringing that bacteria with them here. The other thing too is that in this part of the world, to the best of knowledge of the best historians, there was no livestock here. So there were no cows, there were no horses, there were no goats, there were no pigs. Europeans brought all of that stuff with them when they came. In fact, the Aztecs were supposedly mesmerized when they saw Europeans or Spanish get off the boats on horses, and they said, yeah, these are the gods. Time to submit. But so obviously, there's a lot of passing back and forth of disease between humans and livestock, especially, and humans and animals generally when they were in closer quarters back in those days. So the Native Americans, first of all, I don't do the whole noble savage myth. They killed each other. They warred with each other. It wasn't like they were all, peaceful, and then the Europeans came. I mean, there was conflict here before the Europeans came. But one thing that we know from Squanto, who became the most famous, from all these natives in this Pilgrim period, was that they did practice good hygiene. And the Europeans,
not so much,
were disgusting. They were filthy.
And they still are.
Yeah. Well, then, sorry, listeners in Europe, then they were especially filthy because they thought bathing was unhealthy, thought it was bad for you, even dangerous.
Now, I met people like that.
Really?
Right? Do you ever meet these primal people who don't believe in soap?
What do they wash with?
Water.
Water would just make. Have you ever have you ever found a hobo and just sprayed him with a hose and then smelled him afterwards?
No.
No. Oh, me neither. But imagine that situation, right?
Right.
When a stinky person. Now I know this, right? Because I used to work in a residential school where a lot of kids didn't have good hygiene. They were very Europeanish, if you will, with their hygiene. And they would go, they wouldn't want to shower. And for a lot of them, it was kind of a sad story, like maybe bad things happened to them in the shower, and that was like a traumatic, like with the kids would sleep with jeans on, that kind of thing. So it was something that we tried to be very sensitive about, but they would go into the bathroom and just get in the shower to get wet, right? To get their hair wet.
Yes.
And so when they came out, they'd say, look, I took a shower.
Yeah, and they'd stink worse. It's like the water exacerbates the smell.
Yeah, it would just make it worse.
Yeah, like a wet dog.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
So
anyway, I've known many people like this. It's not good.
So these wet pilgrims show up here. None of them have ever bathed. They're wearing the same clothes for a month. They wouldn't take off all their clothes at the same time because they thought, I read in what book was it? I think Lies My Teacher Told Me. They said it was immodest to get completely naked. So at this time in Europe, especially in Britain.
Even with your bad self?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and remember, these are Puritans too.
Oh, sure.
So stinky, dressed in dirty clothes, getting off a boat. They're kind of wet. And they bring with them
Disease.
all kinds of disease.
Wow.
Because the natives don't have the resistance to all of these microbes that come from Europe. But this isn't the Pilgrims that do this, right? Because when the Pilgrims show up here in 1620, there's nobody. Now remember, these are very superstitious people, right? They believe that God is guiding them, that they are righteous people. And they show up in Provincetown, Massachusetts. What is Provincetown, Massachusetts? Now, obviously, that had to be changed because that's like one of the gayest places on the East Coast today. So there's not even any, or for whatever reason, they ran aground in Providence, Massachusetts, right? You could see how conservatives wouldn't like that as the point of contact. But the Mayflower runs aground there, and then they send out scouting ships around the Massachusetts Bay to look for a place to settle. And what they find is that there's all this land that's already cleared. And when you see the names of places, like so many places in New England, Marshfield, Springfield, the field in those names meant that when it was named, the ground was already cut under, right? It was already cleared like there had been a farm there. In some places, they found corn growing, but there was no people. So they thought this really kind of fed into their idea.
Like, oh yeah, God gave us this.
God gave us this.
Nice.
What had happened was, for decades, this is another thing that's left out of the story too, the British had been trying to colonize mostly further south in Plymouth, Massachusetts, but they had failed again and again. But the British and the French had been fishing in that area for decades and interacting with the natives. So we'll pick that story up in just a minute. This is School Sucks Podcast. You can jump right into this conversation. 843, join SSP, Skype, and School Sucks Live. We'll be right back.
Cybersecurity has become just another political.
Okay, let's just see. I like the chat. I like to see what's going on in the chat. Cool info, Brett. Thanks. Doing my best. Squanto was an Indian Brit double agent. Oh, I like that. I don't know about the double agent part, but we are going to get there. I mean, if you're watching the video show, there might be some spoilers during the break when we talk about what's next. But some of you might already know this. What?
So, I know very little about history, so I'm fascinated by all these stories. But I have read Politically Incorrect Guide to American History by Thomas Woods.
Sure.
And in there, he talks about how when the so-called settlers came to these parts, that they more or less got along with the native people fairly well. And it wasn't until these governments started sending in soldiers to start killing people that hostilities grew.
It depends on where you're talking about, because there's two stories that are playing out like side by side, right? So there's what's in it. Are we talking about the French? Are we talking about the Spanish? Are we talking about because it would depend on who. Like the Spanish came and they're like, oh, here's some smallpox. And then they took out their swords and killed everybody. Yeah. No, actually, I think they had guns. Yeah. I think when they came, the Spanish had guns in the 1500s. I should know that, but I don't know that for a fact. Someone want to confirm that in the chat? Look at my graphic. It goes with your show. I can't click that link from here for some reason. Let me try to...
Well, you can't post links in the chat, so he's kind of...
Oh, wait. I can fix that, I think. Oh, no, I can only fix it if I'm logged in, I think. For some reason, it doesn't have me logged into the chat. I'm sorry, guys. I was the first one who commented, though. I said, all right, so I'm 550. If you see anything from 550, like, did you like the story about the turkey who wants to join the band? Press 1. See that 550? That was me.
Huh.
So
this is a cool graphic.
What is it?
It's a little circle. It's got a little pilgrim hat and some guns and some peace pipes and shit. And it says, "When we invited you to dinner, we didn't mean you could eat all the land."
Or all our dead bodies. Ooh,
that's
spoiler!
Can't wait to get into that. That's some funny stuff.
It's pretty fucking grim, dude.
Yeah, I know. That's like worse than any episode of Criminal Minds or what have you that you see on the telly.
All right, this is our last segment of hour one already.
493-493-0309. It's a long distance call. Where does the time go, sir?
The Liberty Radio Network listen lines are locked into our stream 24 hours a day. Call 213-493-0309. That's 213-493-0309.
It's the Onion Radio News.
All right, we're coming back after this.
What to do with all the extra ketchup packets. This is Doyle Redland reporting. After finishing his Big Bacon Classic combo, Erie, Pennsylvania resident and Wendy's patron Don Turnby, 38, expressed uncertainty today regarding what to do with all the extra ketchup packets. Turnby had asked for extra ketchup upon placing his order for a ketchup-necessitating Biggie fries.
Well, I knew it was too many ketchups because I usually only need 3 or 4 for my Biggie fries, but I just took them anyway.
At his nearby home, the Turnby pantry is crammed with hundreds of other restaurant condiments, including single-serving packets of Taco Bell mild sauce, Arby's horsey sauce, soy sauce, McDonald's Chicken McNuggets hot mustard sauce, pats of shed spread country crock from Ponderosa Steakhouse, and a selection of Smucker's jellies and jams from several area diners. Doyle Redland for the Onion Radio News, online at theonion.com.
Help get LRN.FM into more ears. Visit promote.lrn.fm for a free bumper sticker, flyers, banners, graphics, and more. Promote.lrn.fm.
You look like a DJ. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to School Sucks Live. This is Brett. And, man, we are cruising right along tonight. During the break there, I was checking off what we had gotten through that I wanted to cover. And on page 4, like 4 pages of notes, I've checked off like 3 things on page 1. But, you know, live radio. And you can join our conversation and slow us down even more. 843, join us, SP, Skype, and School Sucks Live. Before we went to the break, we were talking about the kind of this accidental germ warfare waged on Native Americans by the British specifically, but of course the French and the Spanish first and foremost in the early 1500s when they first came. And go ahead.
Now, it's my impression that when these European settlers first came over here, like there weren't that many people on this continent at that time, right? So how does disease spread so quickly?
It depends on when you're talking about, where you're talking about, who the settlers were, and this is something that's entirely, great point, Osborne, entirely omitted from the discussion that people have about this in public school. So therefore, it's like 1 out of 6 people that get some history in college. So almost nobody in this country knows anything about this,
including me.
There is debate. So like in the book, it'll say something like a couple million people were here, right? Okay. In a textbook. Sometimes the estimates go as high as 14 million people in the New World at first contact with the Spanish. But what always happens, and you can see this again and again, no matter where you look, you see native populations, as soon as they have contacts with Europeans, the native populations are reduced by sometimes basically between 90 and 100%. So, I mean, just some examples of that. You talked about there also being like some kind of peace at first, right? And there are these stories that at first it was peaceful.
Yeah. So, like, I was reading Politically Incorrect Guide to American History by Thomas Woods, and he talked about how when the, settlers came who weren't soldiers, that they were able to get along fairly well with native peoples and traded with each other and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean...
And it's when the government sent soldiers over to kill people that's when, fighting and hostility broke out.
Well, you know how it works with any group. Like, some people get along, some people don't. People have a problem here that doesn't exist here. And as the British spread out, yeah, and they get involved in the fur trade, and there are some lucrative, mutually beneficial relationships, but there are also some land conflicts. And we're focusing in New England, right? Which is where the man, wants us to look, right?
Okay.
Because there is stuff going on all down the East Coast. And in fact, there were areas of the East Coast settled long before Plymouth, Massachusetts. And these pilgrims. But we're going to get into that in a minute. It does not make for a very good, like, sort of founding and discovery, warm and fuzzy story of people seeking religious freedom, as luck would have it, on the site of the world's freest country in the future. What a tale of destiny. But no, whenever they cross paths, the natives die. So in 1631, when they have their first conflict, there's some kind of conflict over land. And in the writing of the Pilgrims, it says, "Thank God for sending smallpox to kill off the natives in that conflict."
That's kind of sick. That's like Chris Matthews stuff there.
A couple of weeks ago, we played a clip of Chris Matthews from his election coverage saying he was glad the storm came because it helped Obama get reelected. Yeah, it's a similar kind of mysticism, but they thought if it happened, God wanted it. If God wanted it, it was good. It was our destiny.
Right.
You know, and we see that this is a belief that continued and allowed Europeans to colonize or to move all the way to the West Coast, moving out whoever was in their way, right? It was these stories. This is the foundation that puts that mythology, that destructive mythology that led to the deaths of hundreds of thousands, if not millions of innocent people. This is the thinking. This is the fairy tale that got the ball rolling. So the reason why, back to the original story I was telling, that the Pilgrims who are scouting the bay see all of this beautiful, lush farmland that is groomed and ready to plant, if it doesn't have stuff growing there already, is because all the people who had been maintaining it in years prior were dead because they had made contact, peaceful contact, maybe mutually beneficial financially or, trade-wise contact with French and British fishermen.
Mm-hmm.
And then they died. So these plagues, this was really a plague that swept through all of these Native American communities in the Northeast. They couldn't even bury their dead. Like the Pilgrims talk about these stories of finding dead bodies. There's stories of the Spanish marching into some village maybe 100 years earlier, walking on top of bodies. It was that bad. Now, just to follow this into the future, what happens in 1849? Big event. There's a football team named after this event. I'm also I look to the chat to see if anyone will put it in, but there might be a little delay on the chat. So it's the Gold Rush, 1849ers. These people go to California to look for gold.
Gotcha.
20 years after that, 90% of the population, Native American population in California, is dead.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Let me check my numbers on that. Yes. Native population of California reduced by 90%, best estimates.
That's nuts. So this is why Gene Roddenberry created the Prime Directive.
Now you're into some territory that I'm not familiar with.
Oh. You ever watch Star Trek? Star Trek?
Yeah.
Where they have this thing called the Prime Directive, meaning that when they travel to these other planets, they're not allowed to interact and interfere with the native populations.
Mm-hmm.
Probably for this very reason, so they don't give them all kinds of diseases and whatnot.
Interesting. Yeah, he might have actually learned from history, as sci-fi often does. But at this point, we have an interesting question that's obviously explored in none of these books, because the impact of these disease, really this plague brought by Europe between 1492 that plays out almost right into the 20th century. And we're talking about basically in 400 years, almost what is almost statistically on 100% population reduction of the people living here, mostly because of disease. Right?
Wow.
Now, it's hard to make antagonists out of the Europeans because are they dirty and stupid and mystical and superstitious? Sure. But they don't have the germ theory of disease.
Right.
Most of them. Now, there is the story of Amherst, General Jeffrey Amherst, who, under the guise of making peace with Native Americans, this is during the French and Indian War, 100 years later, when they know a little bit more, giving them a trailer full of blankets,
right,
that had been infected with smallpox.
Definitely heard that story.
To move them out of the way, right? So that's the first example that I can think of intentional biological warfare. But the whole disease question is interesting because what does that mean, and why is it omitted from the story? There was this terrible accident. History talks about bad things that happen. Like this was a bad accident because it takes away from the American exceptionalism of it, right? Because Europeans tried to go everywhere. They tried to go to India. They tried to go to the Middle East. They tried to go to Japan. They tried to go to China. And they couldn't, quote unquote, settle any of those places because they were already all filled with people.
Right.
So maybe they could use their military money.
So were they resistant to the diseases that were carried?
No, they were just there.
Oh, I
right?
see.
They might have had their own diseases, or they lived in close proximity, so it's safe to say that their tolerance to some of these microbes might have already been higher in China or Japan or the Middle East or India, which are all, at this time, equally filthy places, probably. But Europeans are able to settle the New World because it's empty. There's no one there because they're all dead from these earlier settlements. So, and maybe they could dominate those places later militarily, but the reason why, the world isn't 100% British, and they used to say the sun never sets on the British Empire because of the colonies they had all over the places. But the French, the Spanish, the British could never settle those other places permanently, even though they might have tried in India, because they were already too populated, because they didn't have this accidental chemical or biological warfare on their side. So it is by chance, these interactions with the Spanish and the French and the British prior to the Pilgrims coming, that clears, I hate to talk about this in such a cold way, but clears out all this land and leaves just skeletons. And we have this story of this character, Squanto, who is like the willing volunteer to help the Pilgrims learn how to farm, who's just kind of standing on the shore waiting for them to arrive and help them out, right? But there's more to that as well. And we'll talk about that when we get back. This is School Sucks Live, 843, join SSP, Skype in School Sucks Live. We'll be back in a couple. Hang with us.
What if the key to achieving liberty in your lifetime was to move together with others who think like you? Liberty activists are joining the Free State Project, which is over halfway to its goal of 20,000 participants. And they're already making the move to New Hampshire. The successes are piling up and are proving the Free State Project is a real movement and no longer just a great idea.
Okay, song is bomb. Time flies. Warning, Europeans are hazardous to your health. The Irish miners were sent in and they were murderous. Cleared the way for the beef and railroads. Beef and railroads, that sounds delicious.
So I got to tell the chat people about this idea I had. I haven't actually made this before, but I just thought of it today. My son, he's 2, and he's been he's like a crack addict except for chocolate.
Oh, and by the way, real quick, we're on the long break, but go ahead.
Just constantly begging for chocolate.
Yeah.
Just like an addict. Just crazy. Just flips out if he doesn't get chocolate. So I got this idea in my head of something to make. Imagine like a bite-sized hunk of turkey, right? And you wrap that in bacon. And you dip it in chocolate. But not only that.
Now, this one I said no.
Yeah, you did say no. And then I'm imagining in the center of this turkey is you somehow inject it with a little bit of like a mango preserve.
Suddenly my no becomes a yes.
I feel like that would be delicious. And I want to see someone try it.
Yeah.
I don't feel like I have the skills to make that happen.
In the chat, you have we're probably 2 hours before we wrap this whole thing up for the night. So, chocolate turkey, which you should have turkey. Should have turkey. Bacon, which everybody has, right?
Yep. Bacon's good.
And some kind of a mango preserve.
Yeah.
Which you can get at local, everyone's got a Whole Foods nearby. Sorry, I spiked. If you see me like over here with my elbow being all jerky, just wave to me or something, because I'm always like knocking the controls with my elbow. Like one time I hit these and turned the main mix volume all the way up.
Whoa.
And it blows out our sound. How are we looking? I go by Audacity because what I care about most is the podcast. So can I hear you talk?
Me talk? Like this?
Perfect.
Okay.
Levels look good.
So this turkey we made today was pretty good. I rubbed it down with 2 sticks of butter. Like you reach up underneath the skin and you just rub that butter in there. and a bunch of garlic and like rosemary and other herbage. It was awesome.
Okay, that's the end of hour one. If you're watching us on YouTube, hold on, I just gotta stop the recording. Find hour two.